This poem is called Estee Mundo, and it's for a wonderful Mexican poet who also happens to be a translator of my work named Pura Lopez Colome. It was written for her 50th birthday. Estee Mundo. She lives in Cuernavaca, under the volcano, like they say. Well, she lives sort of above the volcano, but who's counting? This world with its sounds and that other with its othering, where words then solid things melt into sounds. Enough? This writing inside the lids of the eyes, enough? This table enough? These wars enough? A sip enough? A glimpse? Oars spinning, the broken notes enough, the drunken boats, and the idol asleep in the mountain, his nurse's milk on his lips. He's dreaming of peacocks, meteors, pyromanic moths, dreaming of serpents and pyramids, worlds hanging from clouds, the wine jug, the lover's spine, and fire as it claims the edges of a page. Bastante. This world in the fold of an echo, you can hear them beneath the mown field, the restive songs. Untitled, October 2002. Eva Braun advised me in a dream to always be kind to dogs. So I gazed at the world with fresh eyes, the rust on the apple, the sliding sun, our hard-won freedoms here at home. Then a famous physicist proudly proclaimed that this century would be no less exciting than the last, not a dream. So I set a match to my obras completas, all 13 pages, that sad house of paper, and let loose the finch from its cage. Next, a woman in red, not undressing, said, "Stop playing the flaming fool." But how exactly is that done? So I summoned my dog, name of Bob, gnarly dog, tossed him a glabrous bone, told him he was not alone. So ran into problems with that poem when it was being translated into French, and the woman translating it, who was perfectly bilingual, said, "What about gnarly?" I immediately sent an email to my daughter in New York and said, "What about gnarly?" And she gave me the 13 different nuanced definitions of gnarly. The surfer one about the gnarly wave, and of course gnarly hair, a conventional meaning, and then the valley girl meaning of gnarly. It was a sensational. So I just sent them all off to my French translator and said, "Take your pick." It's a gnarly problem. Una noche. I'm not sure why I refer here to El Presidente, perhaps because of his fluency in the Spanish tongue. Una noche. Then El Presidente, uncoiling his tongue, quote, "You cannot stop time, but you can smash all the clocks," unquote. And so, seeking paradise, we have burned the bright house to the ground, a necessary act. We have invented glass and ground a dark lens, and in the perilous night, we continue to dance. The tarantella, the tango, the pasodoble and the jig, the bunny hop, the Cadillac, the Madison and Sarabande, mazurka and the jerk, the twist on tabletops, rolling our eyes, flailing our limbs. It's how we keep time. Our feet never stop. Night gardening. A reader writes to complain that there are no cell phones in my poems. So here is one. Its body chrome, its face a metallic blue. It's neither transmitting nor receiving. A woman from Duluth requests that I cease sending secret messages to her in my poems. This I will do forthwith. And the blackbird at evening, she says, "You have misrepresented the river, there where it runs or there where it turns by the holm oak and the bed of winter hyacinths. This I will correct. A recent letter unsigned. You've mangled the citations from Hölderlin, and none will mistake your skies for those of Dominikos Theotokopoulos. Opines a good citizen, concerned parent, your nefarious syntax has infected my firstborn. Have you a heart of stone? And the poem from its homeless home writes of blind sight and silence, the blackbird at evening, nothing you can see. The last poem in the book, which comprises a brief last section of the book, is called Dream of a Language That Speaks. And it's dedicated to Yoshimazu Gozo, a great, extraordinary Japanese poet, performer, photographer. His own performances are almost indescribable in that often he will work on a metal scroll, a beautiful pictorial scroll, as he's performing, and he will be beating up, incising, or whatever you would call it, a picture into that scroll as he recites, sometimes for multiple voices. And the actual use of this hammer on the scroll will maintain a kind of beat in relation to the poem. Sometimes he performs also with his wife. Quite an amazing figure. Unlike a lot of contemporary performance poetry, a lot of Japanese performative poetry also has a kind of ancient character to it, the way some Russian recitation does, so that you feel something very old and very new all at once. Hello, Gozo. Here we are. The spinning world, has it come this far? Hammering things, speeching them, nailing the anthrax to its copper plate, matching the object to its name, the star to its chart. The sirens, the howling machines are part of the music, it seems, just now, and helices of smoke engulf the astonished eye. And then our keening selves goes a world between voice and echo. So few and so many, have we come this far? Sluicing ink onto snow? I'm tired, Gozo, tired of the us, not us, of the factories of blood, tired of the multiplying suns, and tired of colliding with the words as they appear without so much as a by your leave, without so much as a greeting. The more suns, the more dark. Is it not always so? And in the gathering dark, ghostly tall and ghostly small, making their small talk as they pause and they walk on a path of stones, as they walk and walk, scanning their tails, testing the dust. Higher up they walk. There's a city below, pinpoints of light. High up they walk, flicking dianthus, mountain berries, Turk's caps with their sticks. Can you hear me? Asks tall. Do you hear me? Asks small. Question pursuing question. And they set out their lamp amid the stones. That ghostly tall and ghostly small in the mountains, of course, is a reference to Paul Celan's Conversation in the Mountains, a prose piece he gave on poetics. The figures in German were Herr Klein and Herr Gross. This new manuscript actually begins with a poem from the old manuscript, which found its way into a series, and it's called The Classical Study. I asked the master of shadows wherefore and where from, but he said that art was short and life was long. Said, let us praise those flames that consume the day stone by stone, and the lilac by the barn, and the hours when you were young, and the mother and the father tongue. Curled by fire the leaves of grass, buckled the roof beam, shattered the wagon's haft. Ash flecks in the wind's swell. Have you forgotten the whistling of the stones, the heave and shift of the windrows? So I asked the master of shadows about the above and the below, the this and the that, the first and the last. But he said, I am no master, only a shadow. And he laughed. The classical study 3. The master has forgotten his hat. Without his hat he cannot fly. Without his hat his dreams escape up. Without his hat he cannot tip his hat to that woman passing by, whom he remembers from somewhere as in a dream, a room in a dream, or maybe a beach by the sea, blindingly white, hatless, he and she. There's a great Brazilian modernist poet named João Cabral de Melonetto, who died a few years ago. I was in Sao Paulo introducing an anthology of Brazilian poetry that I helped edit and translate many years ago now. And the person, my co-editor, said, let's call up João Cabral. He won't see us, but it'll be interesting to see what he says on the phone. Normally, late in life, João Cabral, the same thing happened with Bob Creeley. João Cabral would answer the phone and do some variation on, I'm afraid João Cabral is not at home. So there started a little sequence. I was thinking of Bob and I having the same experience with resonant experience, sort of Fernando Pessoa-like experience, difference. You answered the phone and said, I am not at home. No, you answered the phone and said, João Cabral is not at home. A difference. Difference too. Answering the phone, Cabral would say, João Cabral is not at home. I don't know. He's gone, perhaps never to return. There are two little prose pieces. One is called L'Azur. I returned a book to John Ashbery last week. It was 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch, a perfect cube. Gee, Michael, you've had that book for 12 years. What took you so long? It was surprisingly dense, I answered, almost as if 9/10 of the universe's dark matter were packed inside. Also, that azure cover put me off for a good while. I thought it might be a symbolist work, something about swans and ice, and you know how I've detested swans ever since that incident. Did she ever recover? Asked John. Outwardly she's fine, but really she's never been the same. Well, I'm not entirely myself today either, said John, but I'm happy to have that book back. I've always liked that strange title. What do you think it means? What I did not say was that within this tiny book, this 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch cube, there was but one word. It was not even an unusual word, rather one people once used all the time as a call or a greeting, mornings or evenings, or else to express a certain delight, for example, in the color of a lover's eyes or the grace of his or her form. A word, then, with no specific referent or single meaning, one often simply meant to intimate concord or mutual understanding, agreement or solidarity. This word had been banned from public utterance for many years, but it had subsequently, as often happens, worked its way back into common parlance until the point where the ban itself became a subject of ridicule, and those who had imposed the ban were reviled, where formerly they had been cheered and celebrated. Is it possible to conceive that this almost invisible book, with that one word in it, may have been responsible for this turn of affairs? The Counter Sky. I was reading a translation of a poem by a poet named Roger Gilbert Leconte, not very well known in the United States, quite a beautiful poet, who was a member of a group with René Dauman called Le Grand Jeu, The Great Game. And it shot me back to, this company in an interesting way, it shot me back to an event in Paris in 1984. My wife is an architect and designs libraries and has done a lot of work out here, in fact, for Berkeley. And she was involved with the design of the new San Francisco Main Library, and she wanted to visit the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. And someone said, oh, you can probably get in without an appointment, which was a mistake. So I, anyway, went to the porter's lodge in the front, and fortunately the guy was totally drunk, so he just said, but then I got to the next gatekeeper, who was a woman of stern mien. And she said, and I explained to her that my wife wanted to see the Bibliothèque Nationale, and she was involved with the design of San Francisco Library. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, monsieur, but it's impossible, et cetera, et cetera. And in my best formal French, which is not very best, I said, of course I understand, madam. It's a shame because we have come all the way from California, but I perfectly understand. And so she took that as a appropriate sort of homage, and went and got a young woman to come out. A beautiful young woman appeared and said, come on, let's go. And we started talking. She found out I was a poet, and she said, have you ever read Roger Gilbert Leconte? And I said, some. She said, great poet. So the merging of this poem, that's too much of a story, but it's better than the poem, I think. The Counter Sky. A young woman of the book directed my gaze toward the counter sky. Behind her there were books piled up, miles and miles of books piled high, and below the scholars bent to their tasks, reading by the light of green-tinted lamps. I stared at the coffee in my cup, the coffee in my empty cup, and asked, would you like a sip of coffee from this cup? And she said yes, and drink she did from my cup's perfect emptiness. I fell asleep. This is a prose piece for a wonderful novelist named Howard Norman. And I was reading a short story of Howard's, and in a sort of summer heat, and I was lying down, and I fell asleep, but the story continued. Just it turned into a dream story. I fell asleep, for Howard Norman. I fell asleep while reading, but the story continued. I ironed a shirt in my room, 1,000 shirts in my room, then put one on, sky blue. I descended to the hotel veranda, took the slender hand of the widow Krista Train, and onto the frozen bay we danced. We danced out to the ship caught in the ice, hull stove by the ice, deck tilted to the west, mainmast snapped, name in gold lettering, the Young Republic, still visible on the uplifted stern. Perfect silence enveloped the ship. When the ice had first closed in and taken its grip, he remembers, the ship had emitted heaving groans and sharp cracking sounds. Eventually, these diminished in intensity, then subsided entirely. What had at first been a source of great curiosity for the shore dwellers quickly became a matter of indifference, a thing scarcely noticed. After stripping the ship of its goods and witnessing its slow demise, people had grown almost apathetic toward the looming remains, however impressive the shadows they cast upon the ice in the changing winter light. We danced round that ship, we two, danced and danced back toward the shore, the veranda, the hotel, the lamps, though by then we were out of step. Coincidentally with winning this, or being given this award, this Wallace Stevens Award by the American Academy, I had been trying to bring some voice of Stevens into my work as a homage, without writing Wallace Stevens poems, obviously. There are enough of those, but not too many. And this sequence called Say, S-A-Y, is really a homage to Stevens. Say she is the queen of Bollywood, of special seeming, and tell us too that Mr. Speaks is silent, and how the tattoo master, Tuttle, is Caravaggio for our time. Say that the music we heard was a real thing, formed of ebony and earth and unrehearsed, and that it caused the drama on the screen to swell, making the unreal come to be in ways we could only envy. Tell us what we most and least wanted to know of who and what we are beneath right now. That first one is actually dedicated to an American poet named Gustav Sobin, who we were doing a Festschrift for Gustav, which he didn't live to see published, but he was dying very suddenly of a terrible cancer, and did manage to hear the, someone came and read the poems in the homage to him. Say too, say that an old man in his garden considers the mysteries of clover and vetch, while a helicopter passes overhead, scything the afternoon air. Say that he has known these things before, clover and vetch, helicopter, and the ditch again and again into which people fall. His memory is perfectly clear and serves no good, no purpose at all. He has seen things before, the fly in the bottle, the indeterminate will. Santa Muerte, Saint Death, we pray to you to swallow our breath. Just a few more. Poem called Red Sea, red letter C. Which was named after, it's a kind of homage to Itzhak Babel, who of course has there's a collection of his prose called Red Cavalry. Babel being a Jew who rode with the Cossacks, never a good idea, as he found out. I asked the Master of Silence why he rode horseback with the Cossacks, and he said, to peer into the eye of heaven, perhaps through the eyes of death. I asked the Master of Silence, a Jew, what he saw as he rode, and he spoke of street lamps and taverns and indolence, watermills and ceaseless rains, bright cherries in heaps, churches in flames, slaughtered oxen and racing clouds, bent women gathered by a well. So daybreak and nightfall and my silence, no heaven awaits. Fragment after Dante. And I saw myself in the afterlife of rivers and fields, among the wandering souls and light-flecked paths. There I was amazed to find the damned and the innocent commingled so, torturers and victims, masters, sycophants, and slaves idling arm in arm, chatting about nothing, about the fullness and ripeness of nothing, the pleasures of the day and of the hearth fires to follow in the evening calm. And they turned to me as one, and I heard their words, their calls, each syllable, each phrase, but could not make them out. And I saw myself struggling to wake, howling and foaming like a dog biting at empty air. And this is called Second Fragment, again after Dante. And she clasped my arm and said, "You, my son, who have lingered too long among the dead, go and return to the lighted shore for those brief moments you have left there among the hypocrites, the torturers and deceivers who've locked our republic in their thrall, as I'm told, for that far I cannot see from this clouded place." Then before my eyes her face transformed from old to young, that one I'd known in earliest youth, and disappeared from view. Two last short poems. Say, 5. Say that a spider with a death's head crawls into your bed and offers to make love. How explain that you are done with love? And what of death? Poem, don't be so strange. Untitled, October 06. That's now. We're up to the present. An unremarkable house like Spinoza's seems perfect in form. Its steeply pitched roof, 4 chimneys, shutters open, bare winter elms, worn, slender path before the door. True that he and his lathe did not stay long in this house near Leiden. True as well that it tells us nothing, being of brick and perfectly silent, perfectly finite and fixed. He lived there for a while and moved on. Thank you.